To counter every lie about the election results, tell a truth. Here's the truth, a live look at Georgia, where a full by-hand recount for each county is underway. And look at the transparency provided here by Fulton County so that folks can see it for themselves. That's what we need, to help people see the reality. Back with me is Carl Bernstein, Julie Rudzinski, and Sam Donaldson. At the same time, there is this dysfunction underway. I do think this is a perilous moment for democracy because some Trump fans, not all of them, some Trump fans are going deeper down this rabbit hole of voter fraud belief, of conspiracy theory. And Carl, ultimately, that's what this is, a giant conspiracy theory, right? If this election had been rigged and Trump had actually won by millions of votes, what, thousands of people would have to be in on it?
Of course, it's a conspiracy theory, but we have to look at who is making the conspiracy plausible to so many people. And that's why I come back to our coverage, not just of the instant moment, but I think in Washington particularly, and in the country generally, we have to start rethinking in the mainstream, quote, mainstream media, some of our coverage. One is, let's take the fact that for 3 years, those closest to Donald Trump in the national security bureaucracy, whether it was Bolton, whether it was Kelly, whether it was Mattis, they all knew, and we knew, that they believed that the President of the United States was a danger to the national security of the United States. And they believed, Kelly, Mattis, Tillerson, and on, that he was unfit to be president. We needed to find a way to report that, get it into our websites, get it on the air much more powerfully than we were able to. And concomitantly, we have in the country this former Cold Civil War, now ignited. We need to start covering the country. What is going on with the people of the United States? It might not be as sexy as covering something in Washington or in LA or New York. We need to have reporters out in the country and change our agenda about what people in the country are saying and doing, how they live. It might reduce ratings. It might cut into profits. But if we're going to do the mission that we are supposed to fulfill, we need to start covering both Washington and the country with a different perspective, and perhaps start changing some of our own rules, particularly allowing those close to the president, whether it's Trump or the new president, whoever he is, and in the Congress of the United States, to talk to us on background, tell us what they think is really going on, and then somehow we continue to give them the cover of anonymity. We've got to find a better way to do it to get the truth out there. And the same in the country at large.
Yeah. And when covering the country, that includes profiles of Biden voters, since there's been so much interest in Trump voters in the past 4 years. Let's take a look at Barack Obama, this brand new interview. Obama's starting a book tour for his book, A Promised Land, which comes out on Tuesday. It's going to be the best-selling book of the year, most likely. Here's what he told Gayle King about Trump voters.
72 million people voted for Donald Trump. What does that say to you about the state of this country?
Well, what it says is that we are still deeply divided. The power of that alternative worldview that's presented in the media that those voters consume, it carries a lot of weight.
Are you worried about that?
Yes. It's very hard for our democracy to function if we are operating on just completely different sets of facts.
And when I hear that, Sam Donaldson, I think it's an environment that, is so different, so much more poisoned than the years you were covering the Reagan White House, for example, the first Bush White House, the Clinton White House. Former presidents didn't have to deal with this parallel universe problem that Obama and Trump and now Biden will have to deal with.
That's true, and reporters the press didn't have to deal with this universe, which I think was always out there, but always kind of underground until Donald Trump gave it voice, until Fox gave it voice, Newsmax gave it voice. And if you say, we've got to do better, who's the we? Washington Post? New York Times? There's always room for improvement, no matter where you think you are. But are we going to say to Mr. Murdoch, look, stop it. You fulfill that false promise of fair and balanced. Bring balance into your organization. You'll feel better. You'll lose money, but don't worry about it. Are you kidding? And the Newsmax is now enjoying the fact that it's now seizing the Fox audience. It's upset at Fox because of 10% deviation. Are you going to say, stop it, you're going down the rabbit hole even farther? help America. Don't plunge it further into discord. I hope so, but I don't think I'll hold my breath. I believe in the First Amendment. I say unfortunately because I do believe in it, and I think everyone on this program believes in it. But how do you stop these organizations that can make money and also propagate the falsehoods to viewers and listeners who want it? Can you say to the great Rush Limbaugh, you started this, please recant? No. He says no masks. Still to this day, no masks. If there's blood on the president's hands, as some people suggest, because not just of his inattention, but of his deliberate effort to keep the scientists like Tony Fauci from telling us how to keep ourselves safer and our neighbors safer. If there's blood on his hands, what about the blood on the hands of the enablers in the media who also know better? Yet there is the First Amendment, there's a due process and all of that. I'm blathering about this, not because I think I'm wrong, but because I don't have an answer. I don't have a quick answer to turn the country around through the media reforming itself everywhere and through people, therefore, reforming themselves.
But I appreciate your candor that there is no easy answer to this. Julie, last word to you, because there's a social media aspect of this as well. On Fox, there's a lot of promotion of these new platforms like Parler, these social media sites that are catering to conservatives, or at least trying to appeal to conservatives by saying they won't be censored on these platforms. Twitter and Facebook, of course, are not censoring. They're just trying to clean up some of the craziness that happens on their platforms. But what do you make of this idea that we're also going to increasingly see an echo chamber of social media where some folks are on one side using one set of apps and other folks are using other sets of apps, meaning we won't even have a common virtual global square, public square anymore?
Don't underestimate how much these social apps and the social media influence what you see on TV. Look, when I was growing up, I used to watch Sam on This Week every week. And if I didn't like something that he said, or if I didn't like something that George Will or Cokie Roberts or David Brinkley would say, I'd yell at the TV. Sam wouldn't hear me yelling at him. I'd just yell at the TV. Today, you have a much more direct way of yelling at somebody. You could tweet at them. You can repeatedly tweet at them. And don't underestimate how influential that is to the people that you see on TV. They are getting pressured from their viewers, and that's why I say the tail is wagging the dog on social media that then transfers over to the TV screens in ways that never happened in the 80s or the 90s, but it is starting to happen today and continues to happen today, and that has a tremendous influence on the information that you receive. It's the same way that Carl was talking about Republican senators I worked on the Hill. They are incredibly responsive to what their constituents write. They get X number of emails every day. And so this is the equivalent of that for news anchors, the equivalent of that for people on TV. And what that ends up happening is that ends up bifurcating or balkanizing our environment in ways that none of us ever anticipated when we all rejoiced at the advent of social media, at the advent of the internet. Who benefits from this? People like Vladimir Putin.
I'm so glad you pointed out, though. It is ultimately about the audience. This supply and demand issue. It's about the audience. And these Fox hosts who are going down these conspiracy theory rabbit holes, they're feeling it from the audience in an hour-by-hour basis. Julie, thank you. Carl, Sam, thank you all for being here.